back to Between Two Hanks. I'm your host, Liz McClellan. I'm here today with Matt Hunt. He is our work market sales director, manager. I think I might have just promoted him, that's okay. And he works across a lot of our lines of business, from Arbor and technical rescue, industrial safety, as well as fire service. And so today, so first, hi.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yes, good. We're happy to have him. So Matt does a lot of traveling and goes to trade shows and conferences, as well as visits our dealers all over the country. And most recently went to the International Technical Rescue Symposium, also known as ITERS. And so we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to get really, really deep into some technical stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, so where was it held this year?
ITERS was in Golden, Colorado this year, just outside of Denver. It kind of rotates around from year to year, but generally it's out west somewhere.
Yeah, I think I saw an Albuquerque one.
Yeah,
back
Albuquerque,
in
Portland next year.
Nice.
So yeah.
Not our Portland.
Correct.
Portland, Oregon. And so can you just kind of give us a refresher of what ITERS is and,
Sure.
and why it's important that Sterling go and be involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So ITERS is, as I said, the International Technical Rescue Symposium. So it's a chance for people to present research and findings that they have in the field of technical rescue. And basically to share that with the broader community so that whatever learnings they've gathered over the past year can sort of be dispersed out to the rest of the community. And it covers a whole bunch of different ranges. There's a lot of rope rescue oriented things in there,
yeah.
But we also see things about search and rescue, helicopter rescue, all sorts of things that kind of interact with our technical rescue world.
So who are these people that you said come and present and do all this research? Like, is this, are they scientists that are out there kind of doing it, or are they, you know, like someone who just has an interest?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's a real mix. I think we did a show of hands at the beginning, and it was probably roughly half the people in attendance were part of the fire service or some sort of professional rescue organization. And there's a lot of volunteer search and rescue folks who are on mountain teams and things like that. There's a handful of military folks. And then there's a fair representation from us in the manufacturing side also. So we want to know how folks are using the stuff, what they're finding, what their sort of techniques are that they're coming up with, and how our gear is interacting with that.
Has anyone from our R&D team ever gone, or is that?
Yeah, so Sterling's been going for probably, I'd say, most of the years that ITERS has been going on. And we've had some presentations over the past couple of years. I think the last full-size presentation we did was back in 2014 on some interaction with ropes with hot pipes and hot hazards for rope access.
Yep.
I did a quick little topic this year on some knot testing that we've done. So we've presented kind of off and on, and then I think some of the R&D folks have been and just sort of attended off and on over the years.
Nice. So out of all of the topics that you kind of went and saw, did you have a favorite?
I did, yeah. There was probably half a dozen really good ones this year. Sometimes the subjects are more or less interesting to me on a personal or professional level, but this year was a really good spread. And I'd say there were two that sort of I found really interesting. One was directly related to what we do, which was some testing that was done by a company called CMC on flex fatigue on escape ropes. A lot of the work that we do is with firefighter escape systems, so that stuff was very directly related to what we do. That part was really interesting. The other one that I thought was just a great example of some of these folks sort of applying their ingenuity to the field was a guy who was working on backcountry searches and rescues and came up with the idea of using the parabolic microphones that you see on the sideline of football games, so that if you're yelling for somebody in the woods, you can actually locate them directionally and hear what they're saying. Huh. And that just seemed like such a great idea. He just sort of had this little spark, and he said, well, we've already got this equipment, and all we got to do is take it in the woods with us, and we can help find people. So that's actually being presented in, I think, the Journal of Search and Rescue or some fairly well-respected publication.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I mean, and I think it just goes to show that, you know, ideas come from looking outside of your own kind of little bubble or little box and cross-industry. And yeah, so I did have a question. I noticed that there was one that it was an empirical analysis of theoretical model UV exposure on webbing.
Yeah.
And you know, I was intrigued by, you know, they were using the NASA and National Weather Service data and doing some mapping. And I think you might have mentioned that Sterling might be involved, maybe do some some webbing exposure of our own.
Yep. So that was a very interesting study. Basically, the impetus of it was fixed anchors for canyoneering and also for rock climbing, where they'll leave webbing tied around a tree or a boulder, and it just lives there until somebody decides to replace it. And so they wanted to know how much strength is that losing over time being subjected to the elements, not just UV, but water and things like that. So they started off by gathering webbing from a canyon and testing that. The trick with that is they didn't have great data on exactly what it had been exposed to, how long it had been out there,
that's what I was
and
gonna
that
ask,
sort of thing. So they decided to see if they could control some of those variables, and they basically just hung strips of webbing on the south side of somebody's garage, and then they had a control group that was inside the garage, just in a Tupperware container or something. They left them out there for, I can't remember, I think it was about a year, and then they tested them. So not only were they being exposed to UV, but also to rain and snow and everything
Just all
else.
the elements.
Yeah, and they
Pretty
had
much
some
real life.
And then what was really neat about that was, like you said, they pulled some publicly available data from NASA and from the National Weather Service.
That's good to clarify.
Yes.
Publicly available
There's
data,
nothing,
no
yeah,
top secret data here.
No. And they're actually able to create this little map or model. If you've ever looked on the back of a package of seeds and it shows you those zones where things grow, they were able to sort of create these zones that showed how much UV and precipitation a given square mile is going to receive. So you could say that if I live here in California and that's in the same zone as Oklahoma, then I know that the effect of the UV outdoors is going to be similar for me here or here.
So I guess, like, one thing that you still really don't know is how long a piece of webbing has been out there.
That's true, yeah. So that's, you know, that's kind of the interesting thing about eiders is sometimes we're creating knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and then we'll figure out how to apply it later on.
Yeah.
But there was, they were only able to do testing in Salt Lake City. So right now they're just looking to create a larger data set. So it's easy enough for us just to hang some webbing outside the building and see how she goes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to keep us updated on that.
Yeah, should be neat.
I guess you kind of covered this question. I was thinking, you know, is there anything specific to technical rescue that you really saw that would be impactful to the industry at large? You mentioned the searching with the microphones as, you know, kind of a new way to do that that could prove effective. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you kind of see that is, I guess, outside of the realm of, you know, interesting research, but not really kind of applicable or changing what we're seeing in the landscape for tech rescue right now?
Sure. There were, I guess, two presentations that I thought were pretty intriguing. One was by Tom Penley, and it was about forces and highlines. And the thing I thought was really neat about it was typically we rig highlines and then we pull down on them, and we can measure the forces at the anchors in the middle and things like that. Tom rigged it basically on the ground and then put a drone up in the air and was able to pull horizontally. So it was, and he basically built a giant ruler on the ground so you could see how far it was going. And so nobody had to be at height, nobody was in danger. It was just a very simple, very effective way to show some of those things. So I thought that was a really neat project that he'd done. And then there was another paper by Russ McCullough from the Mississippi State Fire Academy on the difference between a good belay system and a good belayer. And so the the gist of it is most belay systems require you to override something to lower. And so what happens during that lowering procedure? Is it a function of the equipment or is it a function of the person operating it that makes it effective? So that was a really interesting one.
What was the outcome?
The outcome was that a lot of it has to do with the person.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a variable that is going to change.
Yeah, so he was using very simple systems like just a munter hitch and finding them to be as effective as a device that costs many hundreds of dollars.
There you go. Save yourself some money. So then I did have one last question on the When Angels Fall, accidents in helicopter rescue.
Yes.
And so I was reading kind of your trip report on it, and your note said, never get into a helicopter if you can avoid it.
That's right.
So that's just the pure takeaway from that one.
Yeah, so that presentation runs for about an hour, and it's essentially pictures of crashed helicopters and people who have perished in those crashes. So it was, it's a little sobering.
So a very effective deterrent.
Very effective. Seems like most people get in helicopters don't have a choice. They're already strapped into the stretcher, so they're going whether they want to or not. But yeah, helicopters don't glide. So I think if you can avoid getting in one, I'd probably advise it.
That sounds like very sound advice. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our audience today on your experience or their interest? I know they are published.
They are, yeah. You can go to idarsonline.org is the website, and it takes them a little bit of time to get this year's presentations loaded up on the website, but they all do become available there eventually. And if anybody here is listening and has been to IDARS before and presented, and you don't find your paperwork on there, I know they are actively looking to collect any missing ones and get those posted as well.
Oh, that's great. So that's a public service announcement from Sterling and Matt. And we will also post a link once those are up. So my final question for Matt today is a Hank question. Who would you rather be rescued by? Hank Williams or Jerry Garcia?
Wow, that's a good one. Oh boy. Yeah, I think I would go for Hank Williams.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, he just seems like a more sort of like rugged, like get it done kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think Jerry would probably like get to it eventually.
Yeah. So Matt, thanks so much for coming in and sharing with us your adventures at IDARS. Yeah. And we'll also be posting the link as soon as we have it so that you can see all of the interesting testing that Matt talked about. So thanks again for coming and watching this episode of Between Two Hanks. I'm your host, Liz McClellan, reminding you to climb smarter.